Here we are, Hired the Podcast. I'm here today with my good friend Joe Ignace. Joe's a serial entrepreneur, strives to help people master their purpose, develop leadership skills, help people win in business, and figure out how to live the life they want to live. He's currently the host of the Knowledge Gap podcast, coming over to join us over here on Hired today, owner of the Knowledge Gap Consulting Services, and president of the Knowledge Gap Foundation. Helps business professionals and entrepreneurs grow their business and really focusing on helping young people know their purpose. Joe, thanks for being here today, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm stoked. I'm excited.
Gonna be fun. So, I guess Joe, I kind of want to start out at the beginning because you had a pretty wild start to your career and were incredibly successful in a job that I think would make most of us kill ourselves.
Yeah, I would hope not, but yeah, that's definitely a really tough job I started off in.
So talk to me about it. And you told me the story a little bit, but I think I kind of got the 5,000 foot version.
Yeah, so sure. I'll start at the very beginning. I was really young when I was born, and I'm just kidding. But college, we'll start in college here because that's probably the best place, at least the most interesting. So where I grew up, I'm from Johnson City, Tennessee, this little small town, northeast Tennessee, near the mountains. And I grew up with a bunch of siblings and some really great parents, real lucky with the way I was raised. And there came a point where I was going to college and I was basically debating business over soccer, as many young people I'm sure do with sports. And I ended up choosing going to a school that had a better business school than a bunch of the smaller colleges that I would play soccer at, which was the University of Tennessee Haslam College of Business, and picked accounting as my major. Don't ask me why. At the time I was, this looks good. My pastor told me it would be great. I use it every day now, accounting and finance, but I'm glad someone told me to take that, right? So went to college, and I basically was just this person who, I grew up in six kids in my family. 3 of us were in college. So I had no money, no car. And my parents, God bless them, it's trying to pay for 3 kids' college is nearly impossible. So I was pretty much on my own with scholarships and making it happen for myself. When I went to school, I just wanted to not waste any opportunities. That was like my motto my freshman year. I joined like way too many clubs, took way too many credit hours. And I would wake up, go to the gym from 6 and work until 12 o'clock in college when most people were having fun. It was bizarre. And anyway, I was doing all these organizations. Spring rolls around. I'm in class one time, and an internship recruiter comes in by the name of Jacob. And he gives out this little survey for a summer sales and leadership internship. And I put down my information because as a freshman, you know nothing about the world and life, and you just put your info on anything if you hear internship.
Yeah. So, internships and credit cards.
Internships, credit cards, right? So anyway, I go to one of these info sessions, and there's these 2 guys there, and they do a great job talking about this sales and leadership program. And it turns out it's a door-to-door sales program, straight commission, 80 hours a week, out of state. You live with host families that you don't know about until basically you go through sales training. 168-year-old business, they've been around forever, and there's a ton of students who do it every summer, believe it or not. So anyway, the way that we always talked about when I was a recruiter, and the way they would talk about it in these info sessions was like, are you up for the challenge? They almost talked about it like a Spartan race, And I do Spartan races now. I play sports all the time. I go to the gym like crazy, and I love building businesses, and I enjoy sales. And so it really appealed to me to want to go and challenge myself and not sit on my butt for the summer, eating Doritos or Cheerios and playing video games like most high school kids do. Mm-hmm. Right? So anyway, I went through this interview process, and it was a really pretty great interview process. I'm an analytical decision maker. I'm a slower decision maker, but also in some things, I'm a very quick decision maker. This is one of those things where the average student could make $8,000 at the time. That was summer of 2016. Goodness, the inflation must be way higher than that now. But anyway, so $8,000 was appealing to me, and I needed to make money. So that sounded awesome. And then just, going and being entrepreneurial. I was always kind of that mindset. I didn't know what I wanted to do when I was 18, when I was in this interview process, but I decided I wanted to do something, and I was definitely hesitant in signing up for the program just out of like pure trust. I'm like, okay, like, you know, am I able to get out of this? I remember asking that question. But the more I got to know Jacob, the more I was just all into being successful at this. And it's so funny because he later told me I was so busy in school that he almost cut me from the team. Throughout the semester, I was so busy. I only meet with him once every 2 weeks or once a month, when it was very normal to meet with him every week, because he was mentoring you to essentially do well in the summer. And he was a great salesperson, great recruiter, you know, so it was valuable meetings. I didn't see much value. I was 18, you know, and prideful at the time, right? Yeah. And so anyway, so we go through recruiting, you know, we go through this training program where we meet throughout the semester, and I'm preparing. And like every good college student does, I decided to put everything off until the last week before sales training after finals. Crammed everything in, went to sales training and sales school. Incredible experience, and an integral part of the recruiting process and helping people be successful in the summer and for retention. And it's a week in Nashville, and you basically learn how to run a business in like 5 days. I mean, it's crazy. You know, you're waking up and you're basically doing stuff until you fall asleep exhausted every day. And but it's a blast. It's so motivational, so inspirational. Because in the summer, you just have these moments where you're kind of faced with yourself. You know, you have this moment where you just want to quit, and for some reason you don't. You decide that there's a bigger purpose. You know, so I'll kind of talk through that here in a second. But anyway, so you know, you're getting pumped up to go out there and you know, hit the pavement, right? And I get out there, you know, I'm living with a couple of guys, and they put you in host family. There's about 20, 30 of us in a total group, but we lived in groups of 3 or 4. And these host families were super nice. I lived with like a director of Boy Scouts of America for the Southwest Division, because his son also did the same internship for like 6 years. So he and his wife were super nice. Like, it was a nicer house than what I grew up in, for sure. I'm sure I'm one of the lucky ones. I've definitely had a year where it was like, this is a pretty small house. But anyway, that first summer, you know, I'd never done sales before. It's straight commission. I had to pay my way to get out there. You have these expenses, gas and all that stuff. I convinced my dad to buy me a 2007 Ford Fusion, beautiful purple car for the summer. And, you know, I got out there and I just wanted to do well. I wanted to do a little bit better than the recruiter who was my leader. And I'm just kind of the person who, I don't quit. I just don't quit no matter how hard it gets. And it got really hard really fast. My first day, I made no sales. Great.
Sure.
My second day, I made no sales, and up until I had a manager come follow me. And so I'm working that day, and the best thing ever happened. I wrecked my car on the second day. I was trying to show off to this 25-year-old manager, and I tried to whip my car out.
Oh, geez. After
knocking on a door in the country. You know, you're trying to back up and look cool, right? I'm sure you've never done that, right?
Never in a million years.
You know, in the car there. So, you know, I'm backing up and I smash the side of my car. I get lime green paint from this cattle fence on my car, and it pops my tire. And, you know, this is the moment of pure stress. And my dad just bought the car. I had like no money. And my manager gets out. And it's so funny because he's just smiling at me. And this is sort of the mentality that you learn from doing something like this. He's just smiling. And I'm like basically on the verge of tears. He says, "Hey man, do you know how to change a tire? You know?" And I'm like, "I have never done this before in my entire life." And he says, "Well, no worries. I can show you. Do you have a jack? Do you have a tire iron?" I'm like, I rummaged through my trunk. I have a tire iron. I don't know who put it there. And I didn't have a jack. And so the door I had just knocked on in this little small country area, he knocked on the same door. They didn't answer the door for me, but they answered the door for him. That's great on the confidence. And then they let us use their jack. So, you know, we're using the jack. He's showing me how to do it with the tire iron, you know, switch on the donut and all that kind of stuff. We get in the car and I'm still on the verge of tears, and it's just, my world's over. Like, how can I be successful at this? I don't have the money to fix this. My dad just bought me the car and I totally failed him. And all these, you know, angry thoughts are going through my mind, you know? And, as we're working, you know, I'm mean mugging it when I knock on a door because I'm working, because my manager's there, right? Yeah. And I'm just angry. And who wants to hang out with somebody that does this? You know, it's like, so, you know, people were there lots of good rejection, right? You know, character building rejection was happening. And as I went through, at 12:30 hit, I made 0 sales. It was like the hardest 2 hours of my career for sure. And he said, hey, I've got to go work with another student. Can you go drop me off my car? And we start driving. I'm like, great. Now I'm going to go do this all by myself. And all these negative thoughts keep coming through. And the moment, and this is the moment they talked about in the recruiting process, the moment where you're just like, I don't need this. I'm going to go home. This is stupid. Yeah. The quit moment. You really want to quit, right? And that's what I was thinking at the moment. And we're driving back, and he says, hey, I want to tell you a story really quick.
Okay.
Before I switch off. And he said, my best week ever. I'm like, great. He's going to tell me about his best week ever on my worst day of my life. Great. And so he starts telling me his best week ever. He made about $7,000 in 6 days or something. And, on a Monday, he had a great day. On Tuesday, he had a great day, but his knee kind of felt like it popped. It felt a little weird. Wednesday had a great day. His knee started to swell, so he wore a brace. Thursday, he had a great day. But his knee was really swelling and painful. So he'd have to prop up his knee every time he'd sit down with the family. We were selling educational resources, to parents with children, little kids up to high school, ACT prep, essentially, and everything down. And so he would do that every sit down. And so he'd be sitting down and doing that. And then Saturday rolls through. He had his best week ever on Sunday morning. He said, you know what? My leg was hurting pretty bad. So he decided to go to the ER and he went to the ER. And essentially he said, his greatest week happened. He made $7,000 in 6 days, best week ever. And the doctor told him he tore his ACL or MCL. He tore his MCL on Tuesday.
Wow.
And he had his best day or best week he's ever had in 7 summers selling books door to door. And he basically looked at me and said, listen, man, are you hurt? And, no, I wasn't hurt. And I said, no. And he said, well, listen, life's 10% what happens. It's 90% how you react to it. Mm-hmm. He said, listen, you've got 2 options when hard things come your way in life. You can decide to give up, try to forget about today, and just allow that to conquer you. Or you can go make a really good story and go make something happen, make a good story. It's kind of up to you. And then he got out of the car. Call that a mic drop in the motivational business. And I knew that I needed to go out there and make stuff happen because it would be a great story for the rest of my life. And so I went out there and, I didn't want to quit. I decided not to quit. And I kept going and I worked all day and, 5, 6, it's 7 o'clock, no sales, 8 o'clock, no sales. But my attitude's better. I've forgotten about the pop tire, forgot about the expense. Yeah. I need to conquer this for me, 8:30 rolls around. I'm in northern Texas, near this little town called Crum. And
you're probably about to fall asleep where you stand.
Yeah, no, it was so hot too. Yeah. This is June and, or late May. And, I knock on this door and this really nice young Hispanic couple with like a 2-year-old invite me in. They give me mac and cheese and they buy this really cheap set of books that were like bilingual sight word books,
Uh-huh.
And they were just so nice to me. It's the first time I had air conditioning all day. And they said, hey, you should go next door. It's pitch black outside, but it's like 9:15. They said, go over there. That mom's really nice. She'll probably get something from you. Uh-huh. She happened to be out on the porch. I go next door and she buys. So I get 2 sales at the end of the day, my last 2 houses. Back to back after pure failure, destroying my car and not having AC the entire time. And that right there, that story I just told you, that story recruited more people in my years of being a leader at Southwestern than anything I ever said about the money, the prestige, the resume, or anything else. And essentially that moment led me to have a great summer. It led me to some incredible stories. And if you want me to tell you some, I can. But those moments is how you recruit with culture. And I shared that story among many other of the hardest moments of me selling books.
Yeah.
That's why people came and did it, because overcoming that is the most powerful habit that you can ever learn to build, is essentially overcoming yourself and not quitting and mastering your attitude, essentially. And I could go into hundreds of stories where that kind of goes. And that's how you did it. And, there's a lot more to it, but that's how I recruited 43 people to go door to door.
Well, it's a great point, Joe. I mean, most companies try and recruit people with job descriptions and money. They're the 2 most binary things. And they're the easiest ways to sell a job. Can you do the job? Do you want to do the job? Will the company pay me enough money to make it worth it for me to do that job? They're binary questions, yes or no. But that's not why people leave jobs. When they start a job, they basically know what the work they're going to be doing is. When they get a job, they know basically how much money they're going to be making. And so long as the work is similar and the money continues to be good and they continue to be able to make more, they're not going to leave a job. But they leave a job because the culture sucks. They leave a job because their boss is an asshole. And how do you find that stuff out in an interview? I mean, occasionally you get lucky and somebody really comes across as an asshole during the interview, but not very often. Most people can be pretty nice for an hour or two. And most leaders think they have a great culture. They don't, but they don't know it. And so how do you recruit people for culture, for community, for purpose? It's one of the hardest things to do. And you said that story helped you recruit more people. That's how you recruit to culture. How are you doing that now? How are you doing that for your companies now? How do you coach leaders to recruit to culture?
Yeah, so I do it with clients the same way I would do it with my business. And the process we go through, it's not a simple overnight process. That's for sure. It takes time to really figure out what the culture is that you want to have at your business, and then figuring out who you really want to work with. And you can't appeal to everybody. Mm-hmm. That's the key. It's like, this is the hardest thing for people is they want to appeal to everyone, or they want to, find the right people. And actually it's better to say, I'm looking for a specific type of XYZ person for the culture, because most businesses can teach skills. You obviously still need to have the skills to do certain types of jobs. Sure. But that's really what you're looking for. I mean, I would have people who would go sell books door to door who had other offers with guaranteed money, But it's just not like, the reason they wanted to do this specifically is when we were having those conversations, the culture they wanted was a life-changing, impactful culture. They wanted to do something that was going to make their life different. And most importantly, they wanted to figure out why the heck they were doing everything that we're doing. They wanted to figure out what they could do, and they wanted to get skills that they could use no matter what they did, especially if they weren't sure. Mm-hmm. And usually the people that we would target is the entrepreneurs, the sales type people, right, with the culture. And so for us, we knew when I was, recruiting, we knew that we were looking for those types of people. And so those types of people, are excited about a certain number of things. And if you're an entrepreneur, you're not usually scared of getting out of your comfort zone. Mm-hmm. You usually know that that's the logical next step. So what we do with clients now, for example, is we figure out who is your ideal target person. Mm-hmm. I mean, you got to start there. Why are they your ideal target person? And even going deeper for yourself as a business owner or a recruiter, why do you do what you do? So what I start with my clients is start with why. Why do you do what you do? Why do you care? Why are you doing this business? What's the long-term game plan? Why do you want to work with certain people? How do you want their life to change? Why should they work with you? What makes you different? Why are you different? Like all of these why questions that are often looked over. We all know what we do, the famous Simon Sinek, speech. We all know what we do. We all know how we do it. Very few people know why we do it. And the why connects to an emotional side of people, which is why they do what they do. People do things because it matters to them, and you've got to figure out what matters to your certain type of person. So you start with why, and you figure out who your target ideal audience is. And then you can build your recruiting process with the end in mind. Well, you're going to talk to this type of person. So what are all of the things that they look for in a company? And then how can you essentially create the culture where they're going to love what you're doing? And so, what I would do is I start a book club, for my team, we do a motivational book club once a week, and we would read about these things, read Extreme Ownership, which is a great book, or read, The One Thing. And, we're starting that with the podcast now called the Lion Chasers Book Club. That's going to come out here in 2 to 3 weeks or so. And the idea is that all entrepreneurs, salespeople, realtors, I work with a ton of realtors, right? Business owners, they all want to grow, and they all know the key to growing their business is growth, right? Mm-hmm. Becoming a better version of themselves. And for example, we often don't have time to read, or we don't allow time, or we don't protect time, right? And so the idea of, for example, you do the same thing with recruiting. The Lion Chasers book club is we all have problems, and we brand them as lions. And essentially we're going to go chase our lions and kill our problems by reading some books, having accountability, and a free workshop once a month to apply it to your business. That appeals to a certain demographic of people. Hopefully yourself included. You're invited.
Lions Chasers book club. I'm in.
You can bring your team, and you guys can all read together, and it's just a platform to really bring everybody together, right? When we would do that, it wasn't about the job. It wasn't about the job description. It wasn't about the money, right? It was about, hey, Travis, I want you to be who you want. I want you to grow in the direction you want to grow. And here's a book. I know where you want to be in life, and I know this book's going to help you get there. Let's do it together. Mm-hmm. And it didn't become this, weird relationship where people talk behind your back because you're the boss. Mm-hmm. I'm sure they still did a little bit, but there's obviously a different amount of respect that you want your boss to have for you or your leader than you would with some of your peers, right? But that just created this culture, and that's like a small, simple thing that almost any business leader could do, and something that I think if you're in the process of being recruited, you should always be trying to figure out, what are you doing outside of just this pure job that's lining up with your ultimate purpose, which is why mastering your purpose is valuable. And that's how you figure out what culture you want to be in yourself, right? So that's sort of where we start, right? You start with why, you find your ideal target audience, you figure out things that they're going to love, you build them into developing your people, and you just build really great relationships with people where you're essentially a leader who eats last, which is another good Simon Sinek book, where it's all about helping your people. If you help your people, they'll perform well for you. So you don't have to worry about, making them do things, for example.
Well, that's what the Knowledge Gap is. I mean, you got the Knowledge Gap podcast, Knowledge Gap Consulting Services, Knowledge Gap Foundation. And then, correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't it the knowledge gap of your purpose? And
yes, exactly.
How do you find your purpose to allow you to be your best self? Isn't that kind of the whole genesis of it?
You nailed it, right? You nailed it. And we just focus on like people who are growing their business, right? So everyone's got a knowledge gap in purpose. At least most people do. The statistics show that 85% of people hate their job. Mm-hmm. And I would say you can't always blame the employer 100% of that time. If you don't know why you're doing what you're doing, and you're just trading, your time for money, you're going to find jobs that will pay you lots of money. But then you never see your kids or you never see your spouse, or you never get to do, live the lifestyle that you want to live. Right. And so it's less about finding the ways to get the most money. It's more about finding the thing that you love to do because of XYZ purpose, and then figuring out ways to make money and doing what you love. Right. Mm-hmm. So yeah, but that's what we do at the Knowledge Gap, right? With all of the clients, it's every single time we always got to make sure their purpose is reflected in their business, because the reason also people work with people is because they agree with them. They like them. They like their opinions, right? And so a lot of times people are trying to brand generically, but you really need to be yourself and brand in a certain genre, and you will attract the right kind of people that are supposed to be at your company who agree.
So how do you coach people, individuals, leaders, or anybody for that matter? How do you help them identify what their purpose is? Because that's a big damn question.
Yeah. If people wanted it, I could create, and we could put this link somewhere if you wanted it. I have a template, and I could make it free for only this podcast. It's usually part of the program, but I can make it free for just this podcast. It's called a Be Do Have list.
Be Do Have.
It's Be Do Have.
Okay.
Yep, it's called a Be Do Have list. This is where you start. You start with why do you do what you do? And you kind of go through some of these questions of like, who are you? Why do you do what you do? What do you think you want to do with your life? Why? And you delve into these whys, and it gets people to this place where they're just thinking about questions they normally don't, right? We normally just do this. We wake up, we go do our things, we do tasks, we do routines, we go to sleep, and we rinse and repeat. Very few people cut out time in their busy life to sit there and think, what do I like what I'm doing? Am I happy with my life? Am I happy with who I am? It's essentially, we're all in this hamster wheel, right? And we're running really fast. And rarely people get off and they say, do I like this hamster wheel? That's the idea. So we want to get people out of that mindset. So that's what the questions are at the beginning. We ask just a series of questions to really get them thinking about their long term, their future, start to visualize, right? You can't, who you want to be is an ethereal thing. It's not something you can really point to other than maybe looking at some other people. But I would never encourage someone to go model their life off of another person. Mm-hmm. They have their own unique qualities and talents, and the world needs them just as much as you need anybody else. And there's already another person who, does who you're modeling anyway. So this be do have, it's essentially after we ask those questions, we say, okay, so now we're gonna work on this thing called a be do have list, right? You've got to believe that what you do is valuable and important to the world, and that requires sometimes believing what's called the butterfly effect, which I could explain if your viewers need that. But that's essentially small things make a big difference.
Yeah.
And you have to believe that what you do actually can change the outcome of your life, and you have to accept responsibility for what you can actually control. You influence people. If you're a jerk to people, that influences them negatively. If you're nice to people, that influences them positively. That's the idea. So for this B, this is qualities. So in order to get this mindset of thinking about the qualities you really want to embody in your life, what you do is you say, hey, Travis, okay, and Matt, this is morbid, okay? This is really a weird scenario.
Sure.
You probably don't think about this much, but imagine 30 years, 40 years, 50, maybe 60 years from now, you're floating over your own funeral in spiritual form.
60 years, I've done pretty well for myself then.
That's what I was thinking, who knows, technology, right? So you're floating over your funeral in spiritual form. You can hear, you can see. It's your funeral. Your life's over. Well, at least in this part of life. And you see your son, you see your daughter. They're about to come up to the podium to speak about your life. What do you want them to say about who you were and the legacy you left? And that question gets you really thinking about these qualities that you would like to embody in your life. And what we challenge people to do is write down all 10 qualities of who you want your son or daughter to say about who you were at your funeral.
That's interesting. I really like that. I did a similar exercise with myself a couple years ago, doing my annual business plan, and I got kind of bored doing the regular old business plan. And I said, well, I thought about what's the purpose of this business plan? Where do I want it to go? So I said, it was like we were talking earlier. You start, before we started recording, when we were talking about writing a book, you start with the end in mind. And so I wrote my retirement speech. I have my retirement speech all ready to go. But there are a dozen things in there that I have not come anywhere close to accomplishing yet. And it was much easier to write that business plan because I thought, what are the things that I want to accomplish this year? How do I want to accomplish them that will put me on the path to get there? But a lot of that just speaks to the what, the tasks. I like your exercise a lot because Toby and Alice are not going to be up there talking about the company I created, I helped to grow, the expansion that we had, the new product offerings we had. They're going to talk about this. And not that those things are exclusive of each other, but what my kids are going to say at my funeral speaks a lot more to who I'll be as a person. And that's a powerful thing.
Absolutely. And that's the whole point. You start with who you're going to be, because that's the most important thing. They're not going to be talking about how much money you made. They're not going to be talking about your businesses. They're going to talk about who you were to them. And if you work on that, the B, that's the qualities. The do's are things you want to accomplish, those tasks you mentioned, right? And the haves are the way you want to live your lifestyles, like what you want to have in your backyard and a boat or whatever, right? And if you go through that similar kind of process with all three categories and you work on it for like several weeks, you'll come up with a really good game plan for your life. You'll have what you want to accomplish and why, and they're going to align with who you want to be. And if you're looking for a job and there's certain things you want to have, there's certain things, you can figure out how that job fits in with your life, and it'll make you happier at that job, and you'll pick the right one. Alternatively, if you're the business owner, you can now brand yourself based on who you are and who you want to become. Mm-hmm. And that's going to attract the similar type people who want to become the same type of person, or who believe and agree on, if you want to be an honest person, right? You're going to attract the right types of people. And the struggle that recruiters have on that side of it is they're not good at getting essentially the culture to shine through in the interview or on their website or in videos and everything they're doing. And that's where the branding comes in. And
It's
if
the
people
hardest
can catch
story
that
to
in the
tell.
interview, yep, it's the hardest story to tell. And that's really, if you want to recruit really top talent, a lot of top talent and the right talent that's going to work with you for a long time, you need to work on how can you get this culture expressed to people as soon as possible in the interviews, before the interviews. Once they become an employee or a contractor with you, they need to be immersed in this culture, and they will stay a long time. And I think that's something people really struggle with. Like, for example, like here's some statistics. I think my last year recruiting, I had a good sized team. And I think I had about 50 or 60% of the students who had one summer coming back for summer 2. 40, straight commission, 80 hours a week.
Yeah.
Not sure where they're going to be, right? And so the goal in business isn't to just recruit people, it's to retain people, retain the right people who eventually will go into leadership positions later on down the road. And you really only want people who really buy into your mission, vision, and values. But if you're just talking job descriptions and money, or it's a very generic job, or it's a very generic mission, like, something products, services, the best in the world, it's like half of the mission statements out there. It's like, it's not convicting, and it's not attractive, it needs to be more powerful than that.
Yeah. So how can a recruiter do that? An executive recruiter, an outside recruiter like us, how do they go to a company and you only have a finite amount of time? How do you dig in and find the story of the culture of the company, to dig in, to be able to tell that story to dozens of people in an articulate and compelling manner that is honest and true and can get people that would thrive in that culture excited about that company?
So it's all going to come down to interview process and homework between the interviews. So the overall mindset that helped me overcome this and that helped people still today recruiting at that company do 80 hours a week is the difference between being a recruiter and an interviewer. Big difference. Interviewer shows up, asks the questions, they go through the script, they do their things, they check the boxes, they report, they decide if this person can or cannot do the job. A recruiter, they're looking for the right person. They're trying to connect with everyone. They're trying to see the best version of everyone. Of course, they've got to make sure they're doing the job, and they can have some resources and things. Usually, if you're an executive recruiting level, they probably can do the job. Mm-hmm. If they're in front of you, they probably can do the job. So let's just assume they can do the job. The recruiter finds the people they like and they get them. They do whatever it takes to get this person to work with you if they're fitting the right criteria of what you look for in your culture and what you believe will help, who you believe will be successful, essentially, right? What your perfect ideal target template is, right? So you got to know what that is first off. Mm-hmm. That's what we were talking about a second ago. So if you know what that is and you know what your culture is, you can change how your interview process goes. There's a company that has like a 13 meeting interview process. Now, I'm not recommending 13 meetings. I think you can go way faster than that. But you change the structure of the interviews. If they can already do the job and everyone in the room can do the job, they have the experience to do the job, now you're just trying to figure out who this person is and why they're going to be committed to this for a very long time. Mm-hmm. And so you want to structure your questions to really connect with someone on a deeper level, and you want to get away from the surface. So of course, in sales, everyone knows this. If you're in sales or recruiting, they probably use the same word. It's called building rapport. Mm-hmm. But oftentimes people are building very surface level rapport. They're not getting deep. So I want to talk about that. And then they're not setting up culture building homework, and essentially they're not selling their company the right way. So we can talk about those different points. So the first one is, there's 5 levels of connection. Yeah. And so in order to make this all fit into an hour period, right, you have to be efficient, and you have to be really targeted with how you're asking the questions. There's a really good book called Great Leaders Ask Great Questions by John Maxwell. It might actually be Great Leaders Ask Good Questions, so don't quote me. But it's John Maxwell book's really good book. The questions mean everything. When you ask the right question, you will get answers that you're looking for, or like the way they answer it, of course, right? We're looking at human behavior here. So there's 5 levels of communication and connection, essentially. And so you want to frame your questions to get as deep into these 5 levels as you possibly can. Mm-hmm. So level 1 is when you connect with someone on location. I think we talked about this before the podcast at some point. You connect on location. When you connect on location, that means if you're from Knoxville, Tennessee, where I'm from, and I'm in China, and I see Travis with a University of Tennessee bright orange hoodie, go Vols, I can go talk to him and say, I went to University of Tennessee, and we immediately connect based on where we have been. And you probably do that in social interactions all the time. Where are you from? Oh, you're from there? Me too.
Sure.
Connection turns into a relationship, right? So that's the most surface level, easiest one to connect on someone with. And that's easy to just say, hey, where are you from? Stuff like that, right? The next one is observation, right? Number 2, level 2. This one's harder to get to because you actually have to know about the same types of things. Mm-hmm. Like before we started, you asked me like, hey, do you know what was that? The lettering on to the right of you?
This must be the place. You know, the Talking Heads.
The Talking Heads, right? And if I knew the Talking Heads, we would have connected a little bit deeper. Yeah. Unfortunately, I don't know who the Talking Heads are, so terrible of me. I just threw myself under a bus on this podcast probably. But basically observation, right? So if we're in the same recruiting, if we're in that same sphere, we can talk about things and we'll connect deeper because we know what the heck we're in the same problems. We can articulate the same thing you might feel that I feel, right? It's the same thing when in the summers we would, go to a small town and sell, and we would learn everything about the school, the teachers and everything. So when we're talking to a mom, we could connect on like, oh, I heard the 6th grade math teacher sucks. Or I heard that you guys get 2 hours of homework tomorrow, right? And it builds credibility. Mm-hmm. Right? So observation, connecting on the same types of interests, essentially. So those questions can be like, what got you into recruiting or whatever? And, what got you into the job, insert job here. And, why are you doing this? And things like that, where you can really connect with people on the observation, what's going on, tell me about this, right? And see what their expertise is like. The third one is destinations. This is where you connect on where they're going. This right here, destination is how you connect with culture. Mm-hmm. This is where you put in, hang on. Something popped up on my computer. This is where you tell them what your culture is. Okay. The way we would do this is we went above and beyond in these interviews. Every interview, we were getting to know them, understand why they're wanting to do this, right? So we were getting the first 2, and we're connecting on their long-term values with why are you doing this? And then what we would do is we would prove to them that what we're going to teach them, what they learn from working here, will help them reach their destination. And we would have an exercise. We'd have several. We had 20 exercises we could do based on the situation. But we would do an exercise and show how the hard parts of this job that they're nervous about were the reasons they should be excited. Because what they're going to learn from doing the hard things is exactly what they want long term. And so what you do as a recruiter is you show how your job, your position, your culture is going to help them get their long-term goal, no matter how long they work with you. And it's even better when you can show them if they work with you a long time, they'll get there faster. Mm-hmm. And that's what's missing. That's when interviewers just keep interviewing. They ask questions instead of showing people, how it will work. There's an interesting statistic, and I use this in my workshops. If you read something to try to learn it, it's like it takes you like 2,000 repetitions to really master what you're reading in real life application. If you're just reading it, don't quote me on the actual numbers, but it's up there, like four figures, right? If you're told how to do something, like if you explain something to me, it only take me 400 to 600 maybe repetitions until I really master it, become very, very good at it. Mm-hmm. Not being able to do it, but master it. If someone shows you, on average, it takes you 12 attempts. 12 attempts to master it.
I saw a very similar statistic recently, but it went one step further. It said if somebody turns it into a game, it's even faster. That was the highest level of learning something new, was if somebody turned it into a game and you participated in that game. It was the fastest way for somebody to learn to do something.
Yeah, we would use games all the time in the summer for sure. But that's where I think people break down. They'll explain it. They'll tell them about it. So they'll get to that second one, but they don't show them, and they need to show them how it's going to work and why it's going to be beneficial for them. And that's when you're being a recruiter. You're like, hey, you're basically selling the person on why this is better. And I think people, for some reason don't do that. Who knows? Maybe it's because in the executive world, it's, you're supposed to look a certain way, XYZ. You're just supposed to be super professional, which you would still be professional in this way. But the whole point is that if you want somebody, you got to prove to them that this is the right option for them. And if you can prove to them and connect on those 3 levels, you'll start building a pretty incredible team.
Well, I think it's, I saw somebody say something pretty interesting, and they said, there's one question that you can ask any leader to immediately know what kind of leader they are. That's, how do you react when you find out that somebody that works on your team is applying for other jobs? And I remember when I was still working a desk, I called to try and recruit a guy, and he said, no, that's not the job for me. That's the job I was doing 10 or 15 years ago. But let me get you the names and numbers of some of the people on my team who are a little bit more junior. It sounds like it could be a good fit for them. And I kind of stopped in my tracks. I said, you mean people that used to work for you? He goes, no. I mean the people that work here now. They're great people, but I know this isn't the forever home for all of them. You did a good job selling the opportunity. It sounds like a great company. So talk to some of them. Could be the right opportunity for some of them. And I will tell you, I was not able to recruit a single person from that company. But that leader had connected with his people on their destination. He knew where they wanted to go, and he was trying to help them get there. And that team was connected to that leader.
Oh, yes, absolutely. Because when you do that, it's like people, so you can gain influence as a leader in 2 ways, right? So number one, it would be you have something or have done something that someone else wants to do. So if you're an incredible salesperson, you're number one, people will just listen to you because they know that you have the credibility to back up what you're saying. That's influence, right?
Yep.
The other way, which sounds like this leader was doing probably both of these, but if you have your person's best interest at heart, you gain influence with them. Like my mom may not have done the sales that I would be like, wow, I really need to learn from my mom how to sell. She's a nurse. She's great. But I do know she has my best interest at heart. And so when she talks to me, there's a certain amount of influence. And that's probably every single person, And so the idea is good leaders, if you want to recruit a really good team, you have to be able to do both. You have to do what you say you're going to do. You have to lead by example. You have to have proof that what your opportunity is doing will do for them has done for you, or you just need to be have incredible integrity, right? And then you have to always care about them before you care about just the job. And if you do that, people will they never lie to you. There's this terrible culture between the leader and recruiter and the person you're recruiting often, where that person does not feel like they can be honest because you, the leader talking to the recruiter, get too frustrated when things don't go your way and you try to control too much. The reality in recruiting is you're going to have turnover. You're going to have people leave. You're going to have people quit. And it's better to leave on great terms and people say great things about your company and how much they learned there for the next generation than it is for you to keep that one person because you were really pressured, and everybody else thinks you're a tyrant, right?
Yeah.
So,
well, Joe, this has been a great conversation. I really appreciate it. What's the best way for people to find you? You got podcasts, multiple companies. You got a book coming out sometime in the not too distant future. Sounds like you're starting another podcast. What's the best way for people to find you?
Yeah. So what I'll do is I can give you this. I can give you a direct link in the description, but I want you to go to joeignace.com, and there's right on that front page, you can go down there and it explains the Lion Chasers book club. If you're, a realtor, entrepreneur, salesperson, recruiter, if you're in any of those types of business fields, leadership fields, this is for you. You should come join the club. We'll have once a month free workshops and a book that I pick out every single month that you can read with your team. And in those workshops on Zoom, totally free, we talk about how you can apply it to your business to your team to where you can be a better leader and do better at whatever it is you do. We call, the lions are your problems. So we call it the Lion Chasers Book Club, where you chase down your problems. So I would invite everyone to go there, and there can be a direct link if Travis, that's cool with you, to put in the description somewhere.
Cool with me. It'll be there. Joe, this has been a pleasure. Thank you for being with us here on Hired the Podcast. Big thank you to Noah Cuff, our producer. Been a great time. Joe, talk to you soon.
All right. Thanks, Travis.